So I was looking at this GTM strategy document last week, Benny, and it was just beautiful. 60 slides, multi-touch attribution, AI-driven intent signals, automated sequence flows, a real masterpiece. But then I actually looked at who was supposed to run it. It was Dave. Dave has been with the company for 12 years. He is their absolute top relationship seller. But the guy still prints out his emails to read them, and he literally has a physical Rolodex on his desk. It made me realize there's this massive, almost violent disconnect between the slide deck and reality.
Oh, Dave. I know 50 Daves, Brenda. Every B2B company trying to scale into international markets has at least one. And let me guess, the board approved a $3 million software budget to scale that GTM plan, right?
Try 4 million. They bought the highest tier of HubSpot, a bunch of specialized buyer intent tools, and some AI copywriters.
Right, because buying software feels like progress. You sign the contract, you look at the dashboard, and you feel like a modern, agile company. But here is the brutal truth. Your company doesn't change at the speed of your software budget. It changes at the speed of the actual people who have to click those buttons every single day. Welcome to MATCH B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman.
And I'm Brenda. Today we are talking about what we call the human pace of growth. Specifically, what happens when yesterday's star performers become tomorrow's biggest GTM bottlenecks? Because Benny, let's look at Dave. 6 years ago, Dave was bringing in 40% of the company's revenue. He was the king of the steakhouse dinner, the golf course, the long, warm phone chats. He had these deep, personal relationships with buyers.
Yes, but those buyers retired, Brenda. Or they got promoted. Or, more importantly, they were replaced by 35-year-old directors who do not want to go to a steakhouse. They don't want to get on a phone call with Dave to hear a pitch. They want to do 90% of their research online, read peer reviews, look at documentation, and only talk to a human when they are ready to buy. The market moved. Dave stayed in 2015.
But management didn't see that. Or maybe they refused to see it. What they did was buy Salesforce licenses, hand them to Dave's team, and say, "Okay, we are a data-driven sales organization now. Log your deals."
And what did Dave do? He logged, spoke with Jim, went well, once every 3 weeks. Look, this is what I call executive theater. You buy the tools, but you don't change the behavior. You're trying to solve a structural human capability problem with a software license. It is the single most expensive mistake B2B CEOs make when trying to scale. They build this massive, beautiful, high-speed railway, but they are still trying to run a steam engine on it. And then they wonder why the train isn't moving.
And the cost isn't just the software licenses. It is the pipeline that dries up because Dave is still waiting for the phone to ring, while the competitor is using buyer signals to land deals before Dave even knows there's an RFP.
Exactly. Dave's relationship model didn't just slow down, it completely dried up in 6 months. Why? Because the buying committee changed. It went from one guy Dave knew to 6 stakeholders who want data, security compliance, and ROI calculations. And Dave is still trying to sell on trust. Trust is great, but trust today is built on showing you understand my business data, not on how nice of a guy you are. This is the human bottleneck, and it's killing growth.
Okay, so let's get practical here. Say you're the CEO or the VP of sales, and you've realized this. You look at your team and you see 3 or 4 Daves. You can't just ignore it anymore. The pipeline is flat. What do you actually do? Because you have exactly 3 choices here. Train them, move them, or replace them. And let's be honest, Benny, 90% of companies immediately scream, "Train!" They set up 3 half-day workshops on Zoom and call it a day.
Oh, the training cop-out. It is the ultimate corporate security blanket, isn't it? We'll train them. Why? Because training is safe. Training doesn't cause scenes. No one gets fired, no one's feelings get hurt, and HR can check a box. It is pure executive theater. It lets management pretend they are doing something about the problem without having to make a single hard decision.
Wait, is that fair? Training is a bad thing now? Are you saying we should just fire everyone the moment a new tool comes out? Surely a loyal, experienced employee deserves the chance to learn.
I am not saying training is bad, Brenda. I am saying training people who lack the capability, or more importantly, the will to change is an exercise in mutual torture. It is incredibly expensive, and it almost never works. Think about it. You are taking a legendary relationship seller who has spent 25 years relying on his gut and his social skills. Now you put him in a workshop and try to teach him how to analyze buyer intent data, map accounts, and write personalized multi-channel outreach sequences using AI. He hates every second of it. He feels stupid, he feels micromanaged, and the moment the trainer leaves the room, he goes right back to what he knows.
Yeah, I've seen that. They nod during the session, they pass the basic quiz, and then their pipeline remains empty because they can't bridge the gap between the tool and the actual commercial conversation. They use the tool to do the same old things faster, rather than doing the new things the market actually requires.
Yes, we gave an old salesperson a new CRM. We didn't change the way he sells. We just gave him a more annoying way to report his lack of sales. That is the training trap. It assumes that every skill gap is just a lack of exposure. But it's not. Sometimes it's a fundamental mismatch between the person's core operating model and what the role now demands. You cannot train curiosity. You cannot train an analytical mindset into someone who fundamentally doesn't believe in data.
So what you're saying is, before you jump to train, you have to actually diagnose whether the gap is trainable. Because if you skip that step, you're just throwing money down a well to delay the inevitable. You're basically paying to keep your own bottleneck in place for another 6 months while you run the training program.
Exactly. And during those 6 months, your competitor is eating your lunch. The opportunity cost of a failed training program isn't the cost of the consultant you hired. It's the 6 months of stalled GTM velocity. It's the pipeline that never got built. It is a massive drag on the business, all because you didn't want to have the hard conversation on day one.
Okay, so let's look at that assessment. How does a leader actually figure out who can be trained and who can't? Because let's face it, if you ask Dave, "Hey Dave, do you want to learn this new GTM motion?" He is going to say yes. He wants to keep his job. He'll say he's excited. So you can't just ask them. How do you separate tool literacy from actual business context and adaptability?
This is the golden question, Brenda. And the answer is, you don't use a fake HR assessment test. You don't use a multiple choice quiz about growth mindset. You look at unforced behaviors. You look at what they do when they think no one is measuring them.
What does that look like in practice? Give me a real-world test a manager can run this Tuesday.
Okay, here is a simple test. You introduce a new raw data source to the team. Maybe it's a list of intent signals, companies that visited your pricing page 3 times this week. You don't build a massive workflow around it. You don't make it mandatory. You just share it with the sales team in a Slack channel and say, "Hey, here is some interesting data on who is looking at us right now. Do what you want with it." And then you watch.
You see who actually looks at it.
Exactly. Who clicks the link? Who comes to you the next day and says, "Hey, I saw Acme Corp was on our pricing page. I looked up their VP on LinkedIn, saw we have a mutual connection, and I reached out. Do we have any content on our security architecture I can send them?" That person is trainable. They have the natural curiosity and the cognitive flexibility to connect a data point to a commercial action. They are trying to solve the puzzle.
And what does the non-trainable person do?
They ignore the Slack message. Or worse, 3 weeks later during a pipeline review, they say, "Well, I didn't see that list. Can someone email it to me as a PDF? And also, can we get marketing to write a script for this? I don't know what to say to these people." They are begging for a script. They want to be spoon-fed. They are looking for a routine to follow, not a problem to solve.
That is such an important distinction. Tool literacy is knowing how to click the buttons to log a call. Anyone can learn that. True adaptability is understanding why you are logging the call and how to use that data to change your next conversation. It's the difference between a data enterer and a modern seller.
Yes. And if your team is full of data enterers who need a script for every scenario, your GTM motion will remain sluggish. Because the buyer's journey isn't linear anymore. It's messy. It requires real-time adjustment. If your people can't navigate that ambiguity, they cannot scale with you. So the first step of train is finding the people who have that spark of curiosity and pouring your resources into them. The rest? You have to move them or you have to replace them.
Okay, so let's talk about move. This is where things get really uncomfortable. Because let's say you've run the test. Dave is not going to adapt. He is a relationship guy through and through. But he has 12 years of deep company knowledge. He knows the product inside out. He knows the legacy customers. He is loyal. You don't want to just kick him to the curb. It would destroy company morale, and honestly, it would be a waste of incredible institutional knowledge. How do you move him without it feeling like a polite, slow-motion firing?
It starts with being brutally, respectfully honest. You do not sugarcoat it. You don't say, "Oh, Dave, we're promoting you to a special project," when everyone knows it's a fake job. That destroys trust instantly, and it kills Dave's ego. You have to sit Dave down and say, "Dave, the market has changed. The way we acquire new customers today requires a highly analytical, data-driven GTM motion that doesn't fit your core strengths. And that's okay. But where you are incredibly valuable is our existing customer base. They love you. You know their history. We need to protect that revenue."
So you're talking about moving him to something like customer success or strategic account management, where the relationship is the primary driver rather than the initial cold acquisition.
Precisely. In existing accounts, the trust is already built. The friction of the initial sale is gone. Dave can spend his time doing what he does best, listening to them, maintaining the relationship, spotting expansion opportunities, and bringing in the technical team when needed. You are rerouting his capability to where it actually adds value to the P&L, rather than forcing him to fight a battle on the acquisition front lines that he is guaranteed to lose.
But what about his commission? What about the money, Benny? Legacy sales stars are used to big acquisition commissions. If you move him to account management or customer success, his compensation structure is going to change. How do you handle that conversation without him just walking out the door?
You have to align the incentives, but you also have to be realistic. If Dave stays in acquisition, his commission is going to drop anyway because he isn't closing deals. You have to show him the math. "Dave, your current path is unsustainable. We want to transition you to a model where your compensation is tied to account retention and expansion. It might look different, but it's a stable, high-value role." If he's reasonable, he'll see the writing on the wall. If he's not, then you are moving toward option 3.
Replace, which is always painful.
It is painful, but let's be clear about what move actually is. It is not a holding pen for underperformers. It is a strategic alignment of talent. If you have someone with incredible customer empathy, but zero analytical skills, put them where empathy is the currency. Don't leave them on the front lines of GTM acquisition, where they are just a multi-million-dollar roadblock.
And that brings us to the hardest one. Replace. And I want to push back on you here, Benny, because CEOs look at the replacement option and they see massive risk. If you replace a VP of sales or a key director who has been there for years, you're not just losing that person. You're potentially pausing your entire GTM motion for 6 months while you search, hire, and onboard someone new. In the real world, is that really better than keeping a legacy blocker who is at least keeping the lights on?
Keeping the lights on. Brenda, that is the most dangerous phrase in business. Keeping the lights on while your house is burning down is not a strategy. Yes, replacing a leader is disruptive. Yes, a search takes time. But what is the cost of inaction? If you keep a VP of sales who resists data, who blocks the GTM transformation because they don't understand it, you aren't just slowing down. You are actively teaching your entire organization that adaptability doesn't matter.
How so? What do you mean by that?
Think about your high performers. The young, hungry, modern sellers on your team who want to use data, who want to use AI, who want to move fast. They look at the VP and they see a dinosaur blocking every modern initiative. What do? They don't stick around to fight that battle. They leave. They go to your competitor who actually has a modern GTM system. By keeping the legacy blocker to avoid disruption, you are actually creating the ultimate disruption. You are losing your best future talent and keeping the people who can't move.
Yeah, it's a quiet drain. You don't see it on the weekly dashboard, but over 12 months, the capability level of your entire team just slowly degrades. You are left with a department of people who are comfortable with mediocrity because the leadership team is comfortable with it.
Exactly. When you keep a legacy blocker in a leadership role, you are sending a loud, clear signal to the entire company about what is actually valued. You can put innovation and agility on the office walls all you want, but if Dave's boss is still blocking the GTM integration because he doesn't like dashboards, everyone knows the truth. Your strategy sets the direction, Brenda. Your technology creates the opportunity. But your people, and specifically your willingness to make the hard decisions about those people, determine the actual speed of your company.
That is a powerful place to end. Your people are your actual speed limit. If you don't address the bottlenecks, the software doesn't matter. The slide decks don't matter.
They don't. You have to align the human capital with the market reality. Train the willing, move the valuable, and replace the blockers. That is the only way to scale. Thank you for listening to Match B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman.
And I'm Brenda. We'll see you next time.